Okay, so speak through me. About how frequency is our protection. Yes, of course. Don't come from the mind. Frequency is our protection because if we hold our symphony harmonic, the heart coherence makes it harmonic, then that means that our field presents is harmonious and presents, so it's like it presents everything from the heart, that where anyways all of our energy is coming through the heart, and then it goes flows from the soul through the heart. I want soul. Okay, so what is our light body? Okay, so it's also the source of the light body, and it's the source of all light bodies. Because all the hearts are they are one heart, like a babushka doll. A torus fields like that, into ever greater aspects of ourself. And when I say self, then I mean this tip of the iceberg, densest form of that fractal of the whole. Because we are, from the whole, at fractals of fractals of fractals and fractals, and there's that holy geometry that is the templates, the building boards, structures of how this light comes into form. And so our frequency is our protection. If we are at a frequency, okay, so now let's tune again into that, how that looks. The more light we can let through, so that it comes through our hearts. I am focusing on not going into the thinking mind. Exactly. Just letting that stream through. So, and how I see it in my inner mind's eye that is presented now, that is as I am focusing on this question or on this interest. So it flows through the heart into, and then it takes its natural currents through the body, and then the chakras, they disperse it. Those are the energy vortices that spin both and always in both directions. So it is sent out, your energy, and it also these wheels, these chakras, they also receive energy, but they can only receive where there is an interface, and that means Gleichklang, that means resonance. Okay, but resonance can also be dissonance, which means that when there is dissonance, it attracts more dissonance, because the dissonance is resonant with dissonance. You understand? And that has to do with, of course, that all the symphony, all the sound emitted from us into the field, and also the sound received from the field. And sound is because everything is vibration, so everything is sound. And what is the vibration? Is the oscillation, movement by rate of the toroidal fields of all the particuli that make up the space, which is always also time, so space-time. The particuli within space-time, the matter within space-time, it oscillates, it vibrates. We know the smallest particuli, we call it the atom, but of course it's infinite. And they all throughout, from the atom, which is a different dimension, part of matter is much, much smaller, and it's a much denser dimension. In general, what I'm getting is that the higher the dimension, the bodies they grow, like the babushka doll. Yeah. And so it is our protection. Frequency is our protection. So in the higher frequencies, which means harmonious field. Okay, I'm going to go back to channeling now. Which means just focusing on not repeating, but focusing back into the stream. Okay, yes, exactly. Yes. So, of course, in the higher frequencies, we are not resonant, we are not interfacing with, we are not frequentially a match in that sense, because we're interfacing within the same bandwidth of frequency that is within our sound symphony that we are emitting, that we are vibrating at. Because yes, that is our frequency. But then there are aspects of us, right? And each aspect of us is also has like the aspect of us is not just like, even though it shows up as illness, if it's a aspect stuck in density or much vibrating much lower, and the discrepancy is big, it's because it can catch up. It hasn't caught up yet, been able to, because it's being held down, because there's a fear to feel that, there's a fear to face that emotion, and which is an energy which is attached to a story, and to experience that again, because, and there's still charge there, because that experience, we shut down when that experience came, or it's an experience that made us shut down more and more, that was so unpleasant. And so those are the stuck areas. And that's why I couldn't catch up. Yes. So when we have that something like that within us, it's not just, even though, as I said, this will manifest, if not dealt with energetically, at some point as a physical, where there is, first of all, in the physical anatomy, things can't work as smoothly anymore. So, the whole system starts to is not running on peak performance smoothness anymore. And then that can turn into what we call an illness. At the same time, also energetically, that is where the tornado of our light body spins in the opposite direction of the natural flow, because it's not anymore within the flowing from and back to that source current, which is through every fractal, through the heart. So it's flowing in out of that. It's flowing away from the source current, and we call that inversion. It's not the opposite direction necessarily, is it? Is it the opposite direction? Well, we have to, it is the opposite direction. However, we have to take into account it's not polarity. This is what is so important. It's not polarity, because polarity is the male stream and the female stream. So it's a stream, one stream goes in this and one stream goes in the other direction. But at the same time, and everywhere you see the streams, there's always the two streams, similar to like AC/DC in the electricity flow, and there's always two streams here, male, female. However, these two polarities, are they opposite from each other? Yes, they are opposite from each other, and actually they are one stream, just like they would be one pole with two ends, right? Plus and minus is one pole. It's just minus, it goes in, plus it comes out. So the flow is in this direction, you see? Yeah, and so the female male current, which is also like always these two, the ascending and the descending current within the fluids of the body, really it is one current, just flowing, and you can see that in the flow direction. If you look at a torus field and see how the energy flows, then you can also see that in the torus field there's also this shown red and blue, because there's a northern and a southern hemisphere of the torus, and the energy on the top of the torus. Well, okay, so hold on. Is it always like this? Yes. Okay. It's always okay. Even when even in the individual tori, or I don't know what the plural is, toruses. Even in the individual ones, the top spin and the bottom spin are in opposite directions, and that is exactly how you described it. Then it comes in on the one and it goes out on the other. However, there's also the flow that comes in on the other and goes out on the one, you see, and because every hemisphere also lets through what comes from the bottom, and really that's just from the bottom up and from the top down. That's the natural flow. Okay, so the inversion is the opposite of that flow, of both of that flow. So it means instead of being in the flow, you're out of the flow, and you are pulling away from that current, from that natural current, and the current is light. So you're pulling away from the light, but it's not even that. It's getting denser and denser and denser, and that's how the interfacing with more, always becomes less and less and less where there is light, because it pulls, and what it does is it's like a weight that pulls the light down. So on that border, light gets challenged. It gets challenged because it's being pulled down, and that's where we say frequency as your protection is to become aware of that threshold where you are being pulled down is enough to bring you back into a safe place. Yeah, you don't need anything else other than your consciousness to protect yourself. That's what we want to bring across, to protect yourself. Okay. And if you keep yourself in a heart space, so connected to your soul, and when you realize, there is either you don't know why, there's a bad feeling and there's a fear there, or there's an anxiety there, you're not connected to your soul. And this can happen also during the night when you fall asleep so deeply that you and it's not a lucid dream. There's like very little consciousness there that that you are aware of, and which means you're like so deep in a dream. You're so deep in a dream, and there's no like I am, And the I am is always awake. It's always awake in the dream. That means consciousness. Consciousness is awake, unless it's asleep. And we have only the same word for it. It's a sleep consciousness then. Yeah. Okay. But when we say we are conscious, that means we are awake. Yes. Yes. And so when we forget ourselves there, when we fall asleep quite deeply into a dream, and we're in this dream and there's no I am presence, there's no awakeness in that dream, maybe because it's so deep, maybe because we're so exhausted or something, then when we have in our light body still, as I described before, these interfacing platforms, which are emotions that are at a very low level, still trauma imprints of one sort or another, then they have interfacing, they touch the world, they share the space with other dimensions, like for example the lower fourth dimension, even though we would say, well, it's higher than the third dimension, the lower fourth dimension. Why do we not, see that world? And why can a place that is so nightmarish and that feels so bad, or where beings live that are not in body anymore, that feel so bad, like demonic beings, it's just a name, it's just what have been called like that, bad ghosts, or how we say here in German, and bad ghosts, demonic beings. Yeah, anyways, non-corporeal creatures or beings that are very low vibrational, and they can see you, and they see you, or that aspect of you. And that's why I said that before, because the aspect of you is not, a little dot somewhere in your liver or so. It's actually, because it can be that too, that little torus that is spinning in the, not opposite, but inverted. But yeah, okay, opposite from the life spin. So it's not opposite from male or female, it is opposite from the life spin. So it's spinning in the death direction. And at the same time, that little torus is also experience. It's a tiny layer. It's such a thin layer, but it's all around, and it's inside, it's everywhere, because it is a snapshot of you in that mindset, in that experience, in that imprint, completely that moment. Or if it was a longer period of time, where that was starting to come in, this very unpleasant, this very bad feeling, is that you that was feeling that feeling when that happened, when it got imprinted, is still here. It is not just like an aspect of you somewhere, it's hurting in your little toe, and and then you're also having these emotions. It's completely that age, that part of you, that snapshot of you energetically is a part of your body, and it is a representation of you also in the mind, in the body. And it is not, okay, is it a representation in spirit? No, it is the spirit of you that is asleep to itself, streaming through the egoic mind, believing, itself to be that identity that it felt like it was, who it was, as it was in those times of receiving traumatic. And traumatic, I go like this because it can be obviously traumatic, but I also go like this because there are also things that we might not consider as traumatic, but for a little child or for a baby, that is so sensitive and so wide open, it is in that sense traumatic. It can be a very, to us maybe on our level, on our experience, a subtle thing, but it can have a lasting effect on the child that will compromise the peak performance of its consciousness coming through, its awake consciousness coming through, because it created a moment of because the child or the being in that moment closed it down to what was, and it created that I don't like that. And so there is a no to life, to what is, and that's then what creates this imprint of what changes, what densifies the flow, because it's like slamming on the brakes of the flow here, like whoa, I don't like this. Or it's like slowly pushing the brakes more and more and more and more and more over time. It's like that. And pushing the brakes means closing the heart. And that compromises heart coherence. And that compromises our frequency. Yes, so that is how we, so to speak, fall out of or become vulnerable to, for example, at night, these beings that are in that lower fourth dimension, in that, maybe they call it Bardo realm, or there are hell realms, I know there are because I've experienced them since I was a child, and when we have terrible nightmares, and then also the experience for the first time consciously, I was already in my 20s, I believe, that I actually could feel an energetic being that was assaulting me. Yes. And that felt absolutely horrible, and that kept me in the first, when it happened first, and then for many years until I learned about it. So at first it kept me all the time when this happened. You go to sleep, you have a dream, you go really deep in the dream, because you have unprocessed from your childhood low frequency aspects of you. They interface with that spirit world, that's the hell realms, and it's like they're food. It's food because what they see is your light, but it's light that they can take. It gives them energy because they don't get energy. That's the only way they keep their experience alive. And when consciousness falls asleep, asleep, and it can of course only fall asleep to itself. Yes. So when consciousness falls asleep, that means at the same time identity is formed. And that identity means I identify with, and then I have an image, and there is an image, and that is the belief, that is who I am. And if that image, first of all, an image is always going to be limited, so it's always, how should I say, an illusion, but it's an illusion we play with. And it's an illusion that works, that has a reality, for sure. My name, where was this body born, what's the DNA in the body, and so forth. That's a reality. But more, I mean, an identity of who I am in the thinking mind, because mind and consciousness is not in that way the same, because all the error codes, all the distortions that come through trauma and that shape the mind, that shape the way someone perceives and thinks about themselves and the world. All right. Identity. Yes, that is where consciousness falls asleep. And then there is a thought of I am this, and this thought doesn't include the true self, which is, of course, infinite, and soul. It is that it is that self that doesn't die when the body dies. Yes. And then on top of it, the aspect that has had this trauma and that is vibrating very low. And so that aspect is now, there you are in that world. And they can, when they scare you, or when they even come to you, they just have to sit on you or even stand there. But usually they don't just stand there, but usually not once. No, they sit, they assault, and they scare. And the same thing, of course, also happens in our in the waking life, in this dimension, with other people, just in a different way. How they, how light can be taken through inducing some kind of power play or fear. Well, because power play makes another feel afraid or feel overpowered, and makes another go like this. How power play, the end that is overpowering is getting energy out of it, and the end that is being overpowered, they feel like, they play it's like, it feels like you're the victim, but that doesn't mean that the other person that is overpowering may even in their mind think that they are the victim. But energetically, what is happening is that is how they take power away, is by overpowering another. And then they feel safe that way, because now they can control the other. And then and mostly it's also not even conscious, it's just how they roll, because that's how their bodies have been and their minds have been conditioned, is to get energy that way. Yeah. Okay. And our protection, so because there's just so many, there's this whole idea of protection. And this also extends to not just these, not just bad ghosts or power player people or power mongering people. It's also like electromagnetic smog, bad, which is really, what is bad frequency in that sense? It is a defractalized atmosphere, let's say. It's defractalized, and it needs to get fractal again, which means it needs to spin higher. needs to come back, which means it needs to flow with the current again, because there's not just currents in our bodies and energy currents. It's also, all of nature has current. All of nature, every life form has its torus body, which is also the light body, and how, every life form has that, and they're all connected. All of them are connected, except how are they interwoven and how are they connected? That's the whole, geometry. Yeah. And it's, yeah, okay, let's not go into that. Right. So our frequency determines, or it can be both ways around. Not one determines another. It's the same thing. So our frequency is the spin of the torus field, and if we have that higher spin rate, it's not just higher spin rate, but the heart coherence. What is that? That is that connection in the heart. And that is that harmony. And automatically, that's the heart is open, and then the soul flows through, and the energy rises. The frequency rises. And so people then also, when we go through the street, that have a low discrepancy where there is no potential, and this is not something that is conscious, that's just like, their aspects, how should I say, that's their intuition. They know, not consciously, but intuitively, they will only go up to people and pester them, or overpower. Only people are overpowered, and power mongerers, people who feed themselves, get energy from inflicting power over others. And mind you, this is not like I have zero of that in me left, but I know that I had it in the past. I wasn't just the receiver of it. I know that I've also been conditioned that way and have done it to others. Yeah, and I wasn't aware that I was doing it, or that it was a bad thing sometimes, and then I felt bad, but I don't even remember that. No, I do remember it. Yes, but was that about that particular incident? Was not about overpowering. Okay, so I have, of course, apologized. I don't know about overpowering, because I don't want to get into it. I'm sure I could remember an instance, but I don't want to get into that. Okay. Okay, one moment, please. Not quite done, just still a little bit left to explain here to finish it off. Okay. Yes, so also there is our protection, because it's also, you have to think about, I'm just getting this, soul contracts, nothing, whatever happens to you is also a soul contract. If someone does you, does you wrong, or a crime is inflicted upon someone, or so, where basically one entity does something bad and hurtful and damaging, or taking away from, stealing, to another, that is all by soul contract. Now there are, however, the smaller interactions that not necessarily, I don't know about soul contract, because they're also not like, they're there also to learn. So the smaller ones, anyways, it doesn't matter about that. But what we wanted to bring across is that they're not attracted to you, and you don't interface with them anymore. And the spin is so different that it's unpleasant even for, the slower spinning Taurus, a person that has that, to interact with you, to come there. There's no interest. When there is no potential, because you don't have a part of you, an aspect of you that is resonating with them on the same level. So, and that always means, there's something to dock onto. There's something, look, I can get that from them, because that aspect I can hook into, I can overpower, and they're going to feel, play that program again. We're going to make them feel really bad, make them feel like, because now they got triggered, now that aspect where they felt overpowered in their childhood, for example, got triggered, and all that emotion which makes up that aspect, which is the energy of that aspect, those currents, it gets triggered. What does that mean? Because the resonance comes, now the perpetrator comes into the field, and they have way more of that. I mean, they have like 10,000 times that charge, right, of that energy, and you have a little bit, but they want that. So so when this high voltage charge of, put in some numbers, exact resonance, exact voltage, comes closer into that Taurus field, that aspect of you that has an iota, let's say, even left of that frequency, is going to go really, 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 like, vibrate really, really strong by osmosis, So think about the violins, when a tone is played, and you have, it doesn't matter how many violins, but they're all going to start at some point when the vibration is strong enough. They're all going to play that tone without them being touched. And that's frequency, that's resonance. Yeah. So then you don't have the choice. That's the thing. Then when that energy comes and the trigger is there, this aspect of you is freaking out, right? Because it's now really strong. And now, are you going to, whether you fall into now the old pattern of reacting the way that it was recorded, the way when that happened, that energy was held back. I don't want to feel that, So is that aspect so strong that it will also take over your mind, and you believe yourself to be now not say 6 years old, but you feel that way, and you identify with all the imprints when you were 6 years old, feeling this feeling for the first time. And that would be when you go into that play, and you are then once again the victim, and allow the perpetrator, you give that energy away to the perpetrator, and now you fell back into the pattern. That's how it works for however long it takes, because every time we fall into that pattern, we process a little more of that charge. We allow a little bit more. There's a little bit of, what has been held down is being felt, even if a lot of that feeling, again, is so bad, we're pushing it away. And that is the closing off to what is happening, the falling asleep to being present, and the identification with that pattern. And Um, but a little bit of that charge that was in us, that was triggered through the resonance, gets released back through the heart because it gets felt. And the feeling of it, not the pushing away of it, but the actual feeling of it, is what allows that negative charge that was spinning in the inverted way, or if it wasn't turned around already spinning inverted, on its way to being inverted. Okay, so that means the brakes, right? That's the brakes, that's the charge, that's the pressure. Now is being with the feeling, it boom, it's being released back, and it comes boom back into alignment, and back in the flow. And that's why it keeps repeating, and every time there's a little bit less of that charge, then the experience that is being attracted next time will be more gentle. Because, but here's the thing, it will be more gentle for you, because it doesn't mean, sometimes it needs, like when there's an iota left, but that iota is not going to fit through, it can't come with you where you're going, so it needs to be cleared. It's time, or you'll have an illness. So it needs to be triggered, and sometimes what it takes is like very loud, big field that will trigger this. However, at the same time, even though maybe the field that is triggering this is a very intense field, the experience for you is going to be always more toward in the end, water off a duck's back. Always more mild, and mild, you can handle it every time that happens. Yes, and until one day it is like, oh, that was unpleasant. Oh, whatever, and it's gone. That was unpleasant, or like, oh, but I'm not holding on to that. It's gone. I'm not holding on to it. It's nothing that is keeping me like thinking about how that was unpleasant. It was like, oh, interesting. Look at how little there was of a reaction. The only reaction that was left is out of habit, but emotionally you instantly, in the end, that's then the end thing, is that you instantly, naturally, you open up to what has been triggered, the emotion within you that is being triggered. And in the same moment where you're open, it gets it's that transformation from breaks, going in the tendency of inversion, to back into alignment, back in the flow. And that's why you don't feel it anymore, because you felt it. That's the conscious, the actual feeling of it is like liberating it, so you don't feel it anymore as it felt before. Now what it feels like, once it's back in the flow and you felt what didn't feel good, it's just energy. And it feels like a release, and that is what the release is. The release is not letting it go. You can't do that. It's yours. It's receiving it. Yeah. Whoa. And then you released it. Yeah, Yes. Yes. Our frequency is our protection. Yeah. Yeah, and that's how we protect ourselves, and I'm going to leave it at that.